following program is an exclusive Disruption Networks production.
So you just bought your dream home, and now it's time to move. Let's face it, nobody likes to move. All the packing, unpacking, lifting, upstairs, downstairs, and broken everything, including your back. Let the professionals at EJA Moving Company take all the stress and pain out of your move. Competitively priced moving, relocation services, office moves, and complete packing and unpacking services. They work with everybody to make it simple and easy for you to move and relocate. Call EJA Moving Company at 315-335-0516. When it's time to relocate, have EJA Moving do all the work for you. Hit them up online, ejamoving.com.
Hey, Disruption Network. This is Mike Sacco, the general manager at Nye Volkswagen of Rome. If you don't know me by name, it's only because you have not received the best deal. There's only one reason to leave Utica, and that's to come see me in Rome and get the best deal on your next new, pre-owned, or certified VW. Mention that you heard this ad from Disruption Network and receive $250 off your next vehicle purchase. You'll know why our customers say, I love my Nye VW. Come see us at 5865 Rome Taberg Road in Rome, or visit us online at nyvwofrome.com.
Want to know what's going on at the D? Hit up DisruptionNetwork.net and check out our events calendar, brought to you by the Events Co. Find out about upcoming guests, special events, concerts, show schedules, community activities, and more. Get connected at DisruptionNetwork.net.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again. This is episode 11 of the Unstoppable You podcast with me, your host, Heather Beebe. Couple announcements before we start. We do have, again, that Bowling for Bahamas is coming up. That's going to be December 1st now. That's going to be the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So hopefully your family members are in town or people are here that you want to have a nice time with. Come out, come bowling. We're going to raise some money for the Bahamas to help with some hurricane relief. I also have the retreat coming up. If you want any last minute deals, I guess, I have something really cool arranged in place. If you would like to join us in Puerto Rico, that will be November 2nd through the 9th. We're going to be staying in Rincon. If you have any questions about that or are interested to know more, please feel free to reach out. And if that one's not interesting for you, we do have the one in January coming up, January 4th through the 11th. That's a women's wellness. So keep a peek, or keep your ears peeled for those. Check out my website, unstoppableyoucoach.com, and you can tell I'm really tired tonight. And so yeah, check those out on my website, unstoppableyoucoach.com, or find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and you can see more information in regards to those. So tonight's guest I have for episode 11, I have Chris Cochran from Innovation Collective. Yes, and he is here today from Idaho. He's going to be spending the next couple of weeks here for now through a project that's going to be taking about 3 years.
Yes.
You say, yeah. So the reason I'm bringing him here today is because I think it's really, really interesting what he's doing, and I think you're going to agree. Or at least maybe have some questions by the end of the show, and we can come back and answer them on what exactly is going on.
Absolutely.
So tell me how this all started and help us better understand, like, what is this?
Okay. It's probably been close to 7 years ago now. My business partner and I started, so let's go way back. Because part of your show is like how people got to where they're at.
Yeah.
So my background is varied. I worked in radio right out of high school. I then ended up working in the nonprofit world with high school and middle school students doing leadership development. Found out that that's not a way to make any real money, and left that and started doing new media consulting in the early 2000s, and then ended up in IT. In the course of doing the work that I did with young people, I met a young man who became a really close friend of mine. And he went on to do some other work in nonprofit and then went on to do a bunch of tech startups. So we both went our different ways into the tech world, stayed very close friends, lived in 2 different states at the time. And during that time, he actually got invited to be a part of the Milken Young Leaders group, which is a big think tank out of California. And while he was there, the Occupy movement was in full throes. And he was going to a meeting there and went, if we could take the passion and the creativity of the Occupy people with the resources of these billionaires and put them together, we could probably change a lot about our society. And so he started brainstorming, and in the process moved back to his hometown, a small town in Idaho. And he called me up one day, about 9 months into it, and he said, I'm experimenting with this project I want to do. Do you want to come help me? And I said, well, tell me what this project is. He goes, I think we can fix capitalism, and I think that we can fix loneliness in America. And I was like, that's a tall order.
Ballsy.
I'm in. If you think you could do something that big, then I don't totally want to help with that. And that's what Innovation Collective was born out of that desire to fix capitalism and to fix loneliness in America. One of the things that we've come to learn, and it's no secret, is that their loneliness is at an all-time high. Suicide, mental issues are at an all-time high. And we really feel like part of that's because people do not know anymore how to live in a genuine, inclusive community where everyone is accepted. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it was all started.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the people that you're, I guess, considering lonely, that can't, don't know how to exist in a community, would you say that it's because they're highly intelligent, or would you say, like, what's the commonality between that group of people, you think?
The people who are struggling with community?
Yeah.
I think it's partly because we've become very isolated as a society. We've also become very polarized as a society. This is the craziest thing ever. So this is how nerdy I am. Yesterday, I was flipping through the television channels and the Flintstones was on. And I was watching the Flintstones, and I was actually like psychoanalyzing it from like a geopolitical perspective. And I'm watching Fred and Barney compete at their water buffalo annual picnic. And it was interesting because as I was watching it, I said to my wife, I go, this was a primetime network television show. And they put in there that these two main characters were involved in this big, giant fraternal order, and their wives came, and they all shared for picnic, and it was like a normal part of everyday society.
Yeah.
That was only 50 years ago.
Yeah.
50, 60 years ago. And that is now gone. If you watch modern television today, it's split families, it's people in isolated homes. If they have friends, there's a close, tight-knit circle of friends, but there's no involvement outside of those things. And so it was just interesting to watch, even in that small snippet of American culture, how much has changed. And so I don't think it's because people are, I don't think it has anything to do with intelligence. I think it has to do with the fact that we've allowed our society to evolve in such a way that if someone is not leading and being purposeful, everything goes from order to chaos.
Yeah. Or something to believe in. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the problem you're attacking, I see that. How is it? What is it? What's the tool you're using?
So we jokingly say that we've thrown more spaghetti at more walls than any organization in the history of the United States. I imagine you might be able to say some church organizations have done something similar, but we've really tried a lot of different things. And what we've come to is people want to have regular interactions on a regular basis with other human beings where they feel like they're accepted and they can build something together. They want to be included in the building of something and use their creative side of their personality of who they are. So we use a series of events that we host throughout a community to start gathering people together. And when I talk about people, it's funny because we often talk about entrepreneurism in America, and we think of Shark Tank, which drives me just batty because first of all, Shark Tank is a reality show; it's not reality. And so, if I say this all the time, but if people would I can introduce them to human beings who've been on Shark Tank, got all the sharks to invest, and then had terrible, terrible experiences out of that whole thing. And that's not a knock on Shark Tank; it's a great show. But we've taken entrepreneurism and we've pigeonholed it into this thing that most people don't feel that they can attain. So we start throwing these events where we bring people and show them people who've become entrepreneurs who are a lot like them. Mm-hmm. And the example I use typically is I read Elon Musk's biography thinking I was going to learn this nugget of truth that was going to make me this amazing entrepreneur. And all I learned was that he's way smarter than I'll ever be. And I'll never, ever be as cool or as smart as Elon Musk. However, when you interview the person that started the grocery store chain that has been around town for 50 years, you're like, well, that person's like me. I can relate to that. And I can actually do that because they're from here too. And so we use a series of events where we start out with, we call them fireside chats. In fact, we have one coming up Wednesday night, the 23rd, where we interview people. And it's a very different, super inspiring interview than what you would think. The interviews are, tell me about who you were as a young person. Tell me about how you got to be who you are. Tell me about the life lessons. And we really encourage them to tell stories, not just, I don't want someone to get up there and expound on their wisdom. What I really want is for them to tell me the stories so that people can come to their own conclusions as to what they did. And so we start that series of events. Eventually we do another one called Coffee and Concepts, which will start up, which is where we gather people together and we talk about technology news in a way that anyone can understand. Everyone introduces themselves to the rest of the group so you get an understanding of who's there. And then at the end of that, anyone who has any idea, it could be something super crazy, or it could be something that's like, I have this legitimate business I'm working on. They can say, here's what I'm struggling with, here's what I need. And we right then and there try to get people to help them and form companies out of that.
Yeah, okay. So one of the times I saw you mention, I think it was the day that they announced, I think it was at Thinkubator,
Yeah.
that you were, and then you came over at the Steve after.
Yeah.
And you were talking to the group and you said something about those ideas that people think are ludicrous, basically, and like those are the ideas I want to hear.
Yeah.
But you said something, like it was a really catchy phrase.
Yeah, we talk about confidence and nonsense.
Yeah, yeah.
There's an engineer, a very, very famous engineer. He's an aerospace engineer. His name's Burt Rutan. He's about, I don't know, 75, 80 years old. He was the first person to build a private spacecraft and take it into space twice and won the X Prize, the original X Prize. Second time, by the way, with no gauges. That's just how badass this guy is. And he talks very often about how the confidence and nonsense is what drives major technology shifts. And so if you think of every major technology advancement in the history of the world, it started out as a nonsensical idea. And so those are the ones we really encourage people to think and dream about, because we found that when people don't know what they can't do, oftentimes they can do things that are impossible.
Yeah, for sure. I love that, because I think generally the most amazing things that are ever invented start out with an idea that people think they're absolutely nuts.
Right.
And they spend a lot of time really perfecting the idea to make it happen. And then all of a sudden it's like, you are amazing.
We had a gentleman, one of our very first events we ever did, a gentleman walked into our event. He'd been dating the same girl for about 8 years, and she refused to marry him because he was financially unstable. And he was working on boats, building wooden boats. And he came in and he said, I have this crazy idea. I think I can 3D print carbon fiber. And we went, what do you mean you think you can? He said, well, I mean, like I've been doing it in my garage for 2 years. And we're like, well, that's crazy. And he goes, yeah, but I can 3D print it into freestanding space instead of like layer upon layer. And we're like, well, what could you do with that? And he's like, well, imagine you were on the battlefield and you had a custom body armor piece, and you got shot and that was destroyed and you needed a new one. I could 3D print you one right on the spot. And we're like Batman armor? And he's like, yeah, like Batman armor. And so that sounds like total nonsense that you would be 3D printing Batman armor. But that gentleman's intellectual property is now a company that's been valued in the tens of millions of dollars and are doing deals with major defense contractors all around the world because they can extrude carbon fiber and fiberglass faster than anyone in the world. And so it is those nonsensical ideas that oftentimes, I mean, you just think about the World Wide Web. We're going to take everybody in the world and we're going to connect them via their computers. That sounded crazy at the time, and now we couldn't live without it. So those nonsensical ideas are the ones that oftentimes change the world.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, it like replaces things eventually, things that you think are just awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I see you're getting people together, entrepreneurs together, ideas basically to bloom.
Not just entrepreneurs together. It's everybody, because we really fundamentally believe that in the heart of every single person is magic. And I mean that like in the most literal sense. There is stuff inside of you that nobody else could have ever come up with. Because of your thought processes, because of your experiences, because of your life situations, you think differently than everyone else in the world. And you really owe it to the world to get that magic out of you and into the world. But oftentimes there's no forum in which to do that, or a safe place that you feel like I can go there and say, crazy idea. What if we blank, and then have people go, oh, yes, and turn that into a real company?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm a big pusher of that. I think a lot of people, I do work as a life coach full time.
Yeah.
People that I have come in my office, they literally tell me things that they want to, clean up in their life or whatever. And a lot of it is stuff that they're just not naturally good at, and it creates stress.
Right.
And then they have all these ideas and all these other things that they're like really good at, but they're afraid to use them because they've been told otherwise.
Right.
So, or they're pressured by society to believe that it's not good, or you'll never make it like that, or you'll never be good at that.
Right.
So that's like literally the story of my career right now, is like what people tell me all the time.
Well, one of the things that I learned in my professional career was, as I got involved in business, I started understanding the difference between a good idea and a good business idea.
Yeah.
And so the thing that comes out of that is you learn to very, very quickly think through the end conclusion of if okay, I want to start this company that does blank. That's a great idea. How come no one's ever thought of that? And you develop this skill set where you can very quickly get to, well, here's why no one's ever done that. It's a dumb idea. Or it's a phenomenal idea. No one's ever had that idea before. Or there's a technology piece, whatever those are. And so what I found is that most people never allow themselves the freedom because they're never encouraged to start walking through that chain of thought. And they don't actually get to a place where they train themselves to think about, is this a good business idea or is this not a good business idea? They just think, well, it's a crazy idea. Someone must have thought of it.
Yeah, for sure. So just a out there question, and then we'll go back to like where we're going with this.
Yeah.
But because what my question is in general, and I think that maybe you question it as well, I don't know. What do you think about schools in general, in the public school system, how it's more, kids are trained to think the same way as everybody in the room? How do you feel that hurts this, or do you feel like this type of education fosters growth in that way of creative thinking? And
yeah, we have some interesting ideas long term on changes to the education system. But I'm a product of I never went to college, partly because I hated high school. And I could ace every test, and I never did a piece of homework because it was boring and lame, and I would get a concept quick and want to move on.
Yeah.
And so we have developed, and it's funny because I think a lot of people want to put some onus on educators and the education system, but we have worked with what we can do, and I mean that like wasn't very good English, hence my not going to college. I think we've done the best with what we have been given so far. However, when the measure of someone's intelligence is a test, it's very, very difficult to actually help foster their ability to learn and grow and do something more. And so I think that that's part of our goal long term is to start changing the education process as well. And we've done it actually in a couple of different ways. One is that we really believe that higher education is super, super important, and we don't want to degrade that at all. But we also understand that the future of higher education has to change. It cannot continue on the way that it is now. It's too expensive. It takes too long. I was talking with students from Mohawk Valley Community College, their leadership, student leadership. And I said, think about this for 1 second. Some of you are being trained for jobs that in 10 years aren't going to exist. That's a problem. And someone needs to address it. And the problem is my professional background was in IT. And I helped advise a community college in the Seattle area. And it takes 9 months to approve any curriculum for a college. When you're working with technology and software, when they're releasing every year a brand new version of a piece of software, your 9 months already puts you behind. And there are kids coming out of college being trained on server technology that's already been end of life by Microsoft. And that's just a broken system. And that can be really easily fixed. But our solution, one of the solutions that we've had is a program we developed called Inspire, where we actually help train people for job-ready skills in short stints, 3 to 12 months, so they can take something they're passionate about and go get a job in that field today. And the first one we teamed up with the University of Idaho and Apple, and we created a program where in 12 months someone can learn Swift programming. And for absolutely free. People work in cohorts, and we went with the University of Idaho because they're a land-grant university. They just won a national award for the program. It was the most innovative program of the year this year. And we put them together with experts from Apple who fly in from outside the area and train mentors and train these people and encourage them. And they go through these small groups together, learning to program in Swift programming language on MacBooks they're borrowing many times from a lending library that we helped raise funds for. So if we can do things like that, that lower the barrier to entry and give people opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have, that's, I think, one way to do it. The other one is, too, we've got to just teach kids to be creative from day one and allow them to be creative as opposed to standardizing everything that we do in education. Totally. I think a lot that we do, it's more because of numbers. We have to standardize things to fit more, fit more students in the classroom, so it's like standard to like get, let's take the average. And I see that within my own family with my own children. It's very hard because you have one kid that doesn't care less. She doesn't want to focus. And well, of course she doesn't want to. She can't stand what you're talking about. Why would she want to do that? Right. But she can sing, and she, there's other things that she's just amazing. So it's something I see all the time. And as a creative person myself, and I see this struggle, it's not, I wish it was more
I actually have a principal coming on here soon that's going to, I can't wait to have him here in this seat to talk about that, because I would love to see more of a gray area for the schools rather than, black and white, like in this box or you're out of this box. You're
well,
in this
unfortunately,
room
so much of the funding comes from standardized testing and really hard metrics. And I understand
it,
that.
yeah.
But at the same time, again, you can't give someone a test and understand if they have mastery of anything. All you've done is captured a point in time, and you don't know whether or not they've had a bad day or a bad week, or just didn't understand the concept, or just didn't get enough sleep the night before. I mean, there's so many factors that go into
for
that.
Sure.
And yet that's what we have for now.
Well, then you feel like a failure in everything else you're doing, and you could be doing really good in these subjects, and then because you're really bad in these, you have to stay back on everything, and that's like, I just think it's, so. But anyway, good. So, so you have you're gathering the communities, getting people together, trading ideas, kind of connecting them with inspiring other ideas, by inspiring through other stories and ideas, and showing like reality of people.
Yeah.
And then what are we going to do with it? What are we going to see happen?
Well, one of the things we do, then we hold once we get going on that stuff, one of the things that we do is we actually find a technology vertical that we would reframe an entire economy around. And we would say, hey, we're going to be this kind of town. And the reason that we do that is many people, when you say, hey, dream really big, they go, okay, where do I start? And you're like, just dream. And they're like, about what? And we don't have framework. But if we give people framework within which to dream, they dream really, really big. And so when we are able to take a town and go, hey, we're going to be this kind of a town again. Every town started with a major technology boom or an economic boom that started that town. And then we somewhere along the way decided, well, what we really need to do is be diversified and have a bunch of different economies and those kind of things. And people lost the pride in the town they lived in. They lost the ability to train up people within that and have like the masterful training for those kinds of industries. So we'll pick a technology vertical here, and then we'll throw a big giant 3-day party where we'll bring in experts from around the world to come in and speak around that technology vertical. We'll get people inspired to hang out and then be a part of that, meet those people who are movers and shakers in those industries, who are leaders and experts in those industries. And then what we do is we get a large technology partner to go, hey, why don't you pay attention to what's going on in this crazy town in central New York? They're dreaming really big around blank. Wouldn't you love some of that? Wouldn't you like them to start building intellectual property for you? And then those companies that start coming up and bubbling to the top with the best technology, we start connecting them with large brands outside of the area so that they can start growing and scaling those companies quickly. Yeah.
So have you ever seen it go both ways? Like where, okay, so we have, an interest to invest, into something here, which is basically, I think, essentially what we would want, right? Have you ever had people basically become, scouted out? Is there a potential for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think through some stories about how that. Yes, because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
What we typically end up seeing is bigger brands go, wait, you did what? Where? In a little tiny town in Idaho?
Yeah.
Yes, come to us. And so, we've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Because they don't know oftentimes there's technology. In fact, one of the companies in the small town that we're working in, where our home base is, they started creating this revolutionary technology for lighting, and specifically lighting of screens like watches and phones and those kind of things. And 7-8 years into their company's existence, they did a $400 million joint venture with BOE, which is the world's largest screen manufacturer. That all happened because there was a bunch of dots that got connected between what we were doing, some other people were doing, and everything else, and they basically got scouted out for that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you make the initial connection to come into Utica? Because this is a partnership that basically with Oneida County.
Right.
So how did this happen?
So our partnership is with Oneida County, the Mohawk Valley Community College Foundation, and then a bunch of private individuals as well. And it started because my business partner was speaking at a conference in Reno, and a gentleman by the name of Martin Babinick heard him speak there. And Martin is from Little Falls originally. He started a tech company in Silicon Valley.
He's pretty well known.
Yeah, pretty well known. And he had spent many years thinking about what can we do to help Mohawk Valley. And so he came back from this conference we started engaging with him. He flew out for an event that we hosted. He brought a whole team of people out to our big festival that we do in Coeur d'Alene each year. And they all went, this could totally work in the Mohawk Valley. So we came out, and the first thing we do in a community is we do what's called a community mapping, where we spend 2 full weeks interviewing about 200 different people, asking them. We look at economic development very differently than most government organizations or higher education institutions. And we look at like, what do human beings feel, and how do they feel their future hopes are, and do they feel like they have the ability to prosper here? So we came out, we did that, we presented the report, they liked the report and said, hey, can you come and do this? And we kicked it off in September with our first fireside chat.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in general, how would you say the overall perspective of this area was when you canvassed 200 people?
It depends on who you talk to. People who are actually benefiting right now have a very, very optimistic outlook on what's going on in Utica and in the Mohawk Valley specifically. People who aren't benefiting right now have a very negative view, and there's very, very little in between. And so it was very interesting. Is cussing cool?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because when we started asking people who were just baristas, bartenders, grocery store clerks, the most common phrase we heard to describe Utica was shithole. And it was an interesting metric for us because that doesn't happen. There's something behind that just doesn't accidentally slip out of someone's mouth. If it's the same phrase over and over and over, there's something behind that. And so it was interesting because if you talk to one group of people, they'd be like, man, the future of this place is super bright. And if you talk to another group of people, they're like, I have to go somewhere else to actually get anything out of, if I want something in this life, I'm gonna have to go somewhere else. I can't do it here.
Yeah. I met you when I was bartending.
Yes.
So, but I'm not one of those.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think we each have to take responsibility for ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And Utica was a big deal in the 1850s.
Yes.
And there's reasons we have these stunning, beautiful, amazing architecture in some of these buildings, including the train station. I'm
Right.
sure you've been
Yeah.
taken around. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
but we have had some hard times.
Right.
And I think economically we never really went up, but we never really went
Right.
down. So we're
Right.
just like existing, you know? And my business started in my garage. So I tell people, like, if something's not going right, you need to worry less about the location and more about what you're actually doing, because anyone can make it anywhere if you really believe in the thing you're working on.
Well, people often get very myopic. And what I mean by that is the other things that we recognized when we were interviewing people, I sat at MVCC in the Student Union building and just interviewed 2-3 dozen students one morning. And not one of those, I said, if you could wave a magic wand and have any job, the most amazing, like your dream job, what would it be? Not one of those students had a job in mind that was more than regional. Like all their dreams were, I would be the best blank in this area in central New York, or I would be the best blank in this town, or I would be a really highly paid nurse, or there was nothing outside of central New York, which was really weird to me. I shouldn't say it was weird. It was indicative of the fact that we oftentimes can't see past our own backyard. And so we need sometimes to have somebody bring things into our backyard, or we just go, whoa, this stuff is out there, which is part of what we do with when we do our coffee and concepts. The technology news we talk about is always inspirational and aspirational. And the goal is that people would walk away from that and go, they're doing what? That's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy, but it's actually happening. UC San Diego did an experiment 6 months ago where they severed the spinal cord of a rat. They used 3D printing technology and organic material to reprint the spine and put stem cells in the spine, and that rat regained the use of its legs. And when you hear that, you go, wait, that's possible? It's not only possible, it happened. And so, but when are we ever getting fed that on a regular basis? And so you think, you look at your friends and you look at your neighbors and you look at your parents and the people that you go to school with, and you just go, this is all there is, because you don't realize there is so much more out there.
Yeah. I really like the idea of the fireside chats. I think it's a good idea to show people, the grit behind the stories, because it's not, you can, here's another thing too. Entrepreneurs or people who have creative ideas or whatever, not necessarily, I'm not a chaser of the money. I think, I'm just tapping my mic right now. Sorry. but I did chase my ideas, and I love what I do, you know.
Right.
And I don't know if I'll ever be rich. Somebody asked me today, "Oh, those are your rates? Wow, it doesn't sound right. You know, why make it expensive? I'm doing what I love, and
Right.
and the average people can afford me. Insurance doesn't cover me, so." You know, and I get to do what I love. Whole
Yeah.
street trees in Puerto Rico. Who gets to do that? I take people on groups, go down there, hang out, hike, and come home, and that's my job. Like, it's awesome, but I'm not, you know, making millions. So
Right.
I think sometimes people see that person who's so rich and like it's just far away because it's so much, you know. So sometimes like entrepreneurs can be in any kind, you know, and
Well,
or
that's part of
creative
what's broken
thinkers
with
and-
capitalism is we've painted an unrealistic picture of what success looks like.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
in reality, we don't allow people to dream what success looks like for them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if someone is passionate about students and education and they want to be a teacher, they're never, ever, ever going to be rich. No, that's the way that our society
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
works right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Unless you write a book on education that's a bestseller, and even then, chances are you're still not
Mm-hmm.
going to be rich.
Yeah.
But we've made rich the end result of success.
Yeah.
And in reality, success comes down to what any human being and any individual feels is success for them.
Yeah.
And as long as they're contributing to society, who is anyone to tell them that they're wrong?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, because success for me, I define it as that magic we have inside us
Yes.
is flowing out.
Yes.
And that to me is success. So when I see people work with me, that's what I want to see.
Right.
That to me is it. And if they're chasing money, I don't think they'll ever find it.
Right.
And they may you can get lucky and have both happen. And it happens. It can happen for anyone, but I wouldn't focus. To me, I'm like, I don't focus on that part. It's like if the more you can flow your magic, the more chances you have. But
So
you
it's been
gotta
interesting
start.
because in the past 5 years, I've gotten an opportunity to meet some really crazy people that I find myself going like, how in the world did I end up in a room with the Rear Admiral of Surface Warfare or the 6th ever employee from Facebook or those kinds of people, right? The chief marketing officer
Yeah.
from Johnson & Johnson or the first ever woman executive for a television station, like those kind of people, right? And I'm like, I'm just some like dumb tech guy from Seattle. I have no right to
Yeah.
be sitting here with these people. One of the things I've learned from every single one of them was even the ones who have made a lot of money, they were never focused on making money. They were focused on achieving that dream. And if you even look at the early stages of Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, I mean, Elon Musk has driven himself nearly broke how many times? And it's all because he's hyper focused on this dream. Is he going to make billions out of it? Of course he's going to make billions out of it. But he's really hyper focused on this crazy dream. And that's the one commonality I found in every single one of those people that we've interviewed in the past 6 years is the people who made the most money were the ones who were hyper focused on a vision and a dream. And the money became like a byproduct of that because they were disciplined about what they were doing, or they were in an industry that was burgeoning, or they had a creative idea that no one had ever had before. And that's where they ended up making a lot of money. But even for many of them, the money part is like, well, yeah, but that's just a tool to get to where I need to be next. It's not, they're just working with bigger tools than the rest of us are. But they would do the same thing with $10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The same mission. The
Right.
same process, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now what will we see next?
So
Fireside chat.
Fireside chats
Wednesday.
run once a month. We're going to get to a place where they'll be on a regular schedule, like the second Wednesday of the month. They'll be the same. We do them in different places, so we can hit a bunch of different population bases. Starting in January, we'll start doing our coffee and concepts, which is the idea sharing and the technology news piece. And then in February, we're putting together our first ever summit here, which is a weekend-long mentorship weekend with people who are just like the ones I just mentioned, like that caliber of people. And then we'll pick our technology vertical sometime after that, and then sometime in May-ish, we'll do our big 3-day festival around that technology vertical.
Okay. What's the intention behind this festival?
Two things. Number one, it gets all the people who are in town to come and sit and hear from different people who they would never otherwise have access to.
Okay.
the first ever person to put an electrode in the human brain and allow people to control robotic arms with them, like paraplegics. That guy came and spoke, and people met him and got to hang out with him and ask him how he did this. And then the next year, he brought back the first ever patient to have a mind-controlled prosthetic. And you got to meet the first like real cyborg human being. I mean, the guy has a titanium stub in his arm that was amputated because he had cancer, and he has this arm that bolts onto the thing, and he talks like this, and it literally looks like Terminator's arm got blown off, and he's just standing there talking to you. And little kids get to shake his hand. And so they get to experience these mind-blowing experiences that you just go, this is crazy, so that they realize this is real and normal, and you can actually have this in your town and your city on a regular basis. All you got to do is dream and start building it yourself. All the knowledge we need already exists, and it's already at our fingertips on the internet. All we really need to be doing then is being creative and focusing it. And then the other side of that too is it gives all those technology experts a chance to come to a place like Utica and go, these people are freaking crazy. They're dreaming that they can do blank, and this guy's never even graduated from high school. And you're like, yeah, I know, isn't that cool? And they're like, yeah, what can we do? And they start developing relationships between here, industry players, and the people here, to where, like, we have the very first summit we ever did, we had the guy who was the lead designer for the Microsoft Fitness Band come out and tell his story, which is a crazy story in and of itself. He then went on to start the first robotic workout suit that gives you a full body workout in 20 minutes. And now he's working for a company that's revolutionizing the helmet world for NFL and NHL. So he comes, they spend time with the people. It's not like a conference where they're like up on stage with their like green badge and everybody else has the white badges, and then they go back in a room and you never see them again. Like, we tell them, hey, you're gonna come party with our people. You're gonna hang out with them, you're gonna mentor them. And so when you get to walk up to the guy who's the head of all of Walmart's future technologies and go, I got an idea for a store. That's a like pretty amazing experience. And you start thinking it's normal. And so as those things are going on, they're developing real relationships. So the fitness band guy, when he comes to town, he literally either has to sneak into town because he's coming to hang out and just relax, or he's going to be inundated with a bunch of people who are like, Amish, or they want to go party with Amish. It's just those kinds of relationships that they're building.
Yeah. Great. Cool. So it's pretty soon then we're going to see, you know, between the fireside chats, we're going to see some things where you're getting people together. Yeah. Awesome. Good. So, all right, some fun stuff.
Yes.
You're in Utica. What's your favorite thing about Utica?
My favorite thing about Utica, well, the food's amazing.
Yeah, I was hoping that would come up.
The food's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. What's your favorite food here?
Well, the Italian food's off the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from like Seattle was where I grew up, and I live in a small town in Idaho. So our Italian food is not real Utican Italian food.
Yeah.
I would have to say Utica greens is now my favorite. Like, every time I'm in town, I have to have Utica greens because it's like so good.
Yeah.
So the food is amazing, but the people here are my favorite part, to be really honest with you.
Yeah.
I haven't met anyone here. Even the experiences I've had that were like, I can tell you crazy stories I've had here with, like, I almost got beat up one time. I had a guy break into my hotel room. All of those experiences were the funnest, crazy. Like, I like, they're all like, this is so cool. I love this town.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, do you have any, I don't know, so can you tell any of these stories?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So my wife grew up in Herkimer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is part of what's funny, because when my business partner was like, I want to do this crazy idea, I got off the phone with them. I'm like, here's what Nick wants to do. And she goes, you know where it needs that is Mohawk Valley. I'm like, oh yeah, someday, because we're like in Idaho, right? They're doing one town in Idaho. So anyway, the first time I came here, I was staying.
Hold on a minute. Martin got you to come back here, but it wasn't even anything to do with your wife. It was so, wow.
No, totally serendipity that we end up here, which is why it's so crazy.
That's really cool, though.
So
that makes it really cool.
Oh yeah, even cooler is that we've been married for almost 30 years now, and I'd never been here. So even though she grew up here, I'd never been here. I heard all these stories. I knew all these names.
Do you still have in-laws here?
No, my wife's aunt and uncle still live here, but outside of that, her family's all back in the West.
Okay.
But what the crazy part is, I've heard all these names, and like, you know, all these names like the Cervellos and like these kind of, and all my whole life I've heard these names because we started dating when we were like 15, and so I'm like, I didn't know any of these things. So the first time I came back, she couldn't come, and so I was here by myself. And I had called her, it was a Sunday night, and I'd called her, and we were on FaceTime, and I was in Herkimer, and I go, hey, do you want to see your old house? And she's like, yes. And it's like dark out. It was in late October. And I'm like walking around, like videoing her old house that she grew up in. And like, there's people walking by and like staring at me like I'm some freak show. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm just FaceTiming with my wife. She grew up here. And they're like, okay, whatever. And so she goes, my friend owns a bar. You should go see if he's there. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I walk up to the bar, and there's a dude standing up front who looks like to be a bouncer to me. And as I'm walking up, he goes, I'm going to need to see some ID. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I hand him my ID, and this lady who works there goes, he's not a bouncer. Don't listen to him. And he looks at my ID, and he swipes it in his crotch, and he hands it back. And I go, really? That's how this is going to go down? And he's like, what? And I go, you're going to play me like that? Really? That's how this is going to go down? And I can see, like, all of a sudden I realize he is drunk. He's so drunk, and I am going to get beat up right now if I'm not careful. And I go, I was told people in upstate New York were super cool, super kind, but that's not how you're treating me. He goes, people told you we were kind? We're all a bunch of fucking assholes. And I'm like, and then he throws his arm around me. My wife is still on FaceTime, and she goes, hey, he goes, we're going to rip your husband a new one tonight. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, I'll call you back. And she didn't hear that part because my phone cut out. And I go inside the building, and all I could think of was, just go inside right now and have a beer so you don't get beat up. And so I go, I'm going to go inside. And so I'm sitting there.
You were in Herkimer?
In Herkimer. So I'm sitting inside at the bar, and the lady at the bar is like, I'm so sorry. Tommy's just drunk, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, it's okay. It'll make for a great story. And so this Tommy kid walks up next to me, and he grabs my hand, and he's staring me in the eyes, and he goes, we cool? And I'm like, we're cool, Tommy. And he goes, nah, bro. And he gets all real close. He goes, are we cool? I'm like, we are cool. And he goes, we need shots. And I go, I gotta go. And I walk out, and I go outside, and my phone had cut out inside the building because the cell signal was lost. And so I get outside, and my phone just starts blowing up, and my wife is sobbing. She thinks I'm getting beat up. And so, and I look at that whole story, and I'm just like, that was so freaking cool. I mean, that's like one of the coolest stories ever. So
she's here, by the way. She's laughing. I don't think she thinks it was cool. Oh, yeah. That's funny.
So the people here, like my favorite part, people here are hardworking. They don't take kindly to people telling you can't do something. They will put in an honest day's work, and they will tell you what they think, and so you know where you stand with them. And those are all qualities that make for like a great community, because you never have to worry about, is this person lying to me and going to go around and stab me behind my back? Because they just tell you to F off in your face. And you would know that. And you're like, all right, cool. At least I know where we stand.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, been super refreshing.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, it could go both ways. I feel like we're like anyone else, you know? Yeah. That's good. That's funny. Well, how about, so we have a very dynamic demographic here. And not everyone, I don't know, what your experience has been, who you've talked to, who was amongst those 200.
Yeah.
Did you get into, 20% of the population in Utica are immigrants.
Yes.
And some being refugees, some being people who just up and moved here.
Yes.
Did you tap into that population at all when you were?
We did, and we've tried to work really closely with the Refugee Center. In fact, our November Fireside Chat is going to be at the Refugee Center on purpose. And the interview for that is a gentleman who came to America with $24 and 4 suitcases and didn't have a penny, and worked his way through college, started a technology company, and then recently exited that company and sold it to a much larger company. Never took a dime of financing, never took any loans, did it all through hard work and do it all on his own. And the reason that we're doing that is because we do understand that 20% of the population here are not from here. And they need to understand that the American dream is still alive and well for them as well. They just need to see that it's attainable for everybody. And the truth is, we all need to see that.
Yeah. But I hate to say, but I think they believe in that more than anyone else.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
They work really hard.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, and there's a disconnect between not all Americans, but there's a lot of Americans who think that they have it handed to them when they get here, and that's really not true.
Right.
So that hard work ethic is something that they bring with them.
Right.
And it's incredible to see them flourish. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other, the other side of that too, and this is something that it's hard in a culture that's been traditionally and I say this because I come from a town that is like one race of people for the most part, right? It's hard for people in a monoculture to understand that diversity breeds better creativity. And there's a really famous story about a tech company that realized they were creating a monoculture of thinkers who all thought the same, who all act the same. Because if you're a manager, you hire people who you want to manage. And so you hire people who think like you because they're easy to manage. And then eventually, 2 or 3 generations into that, You have people who look alike, sound alike, talk alike, and think alike. And so they started this study, and they found out that people above the Mason-Dixon line keep ketchup in the refrigerator. People below the Mason-Dixon line keep ketchup in the pantry. And so when you think about alternatives for ketchup, when you run out of ketchup, we think of things above the Mason-Dixon line as like mayonnaise, mustard, those kind of things. In the South, they think about things like vinegar, peanut butter, those kinds of alternatives. And so in doing that, what you actually get is a better creativity to problem solving because you have a diverse population. It's not about diversity for diversity's sake. It's about people who come from a different culture are wired completely differently because they don't think the same way that you do if you grew up here or Seattle or Austin, wherever you grew up. You have a fundamental thinking in a way that you think based on your culture. And when your culture is completely foreign from that, guess what? You can think of things in a way that sometimes no one here has ever thought of before. And that creates more creativity and it creates better products actually in the long run. So we are firm believers that the diversity that's here needs to be capitalized on and tapped into.
Yes. Oh, this is huge. Oh, yeah. I'm a huge believer in that. I live like in the middle of all of it, like, not too far from here. And I love where I live. It's very, very close to many, many different cultures. What I see most that is not capitalized on is their willingness to work and be creative and figuring whatever it is out.
Right.
And they're very good at that, where I think in some ways, even my own children have had it handed to them so easily that they are very unable to figure out even how to occupy their time when they're waiting in line for the elevator or for the whatever. Or it's incredible to see what my children do for fun and what my neighbors' children do for fun. And I think that's a lot of the cultural difference, but also having the resources or not having the resources. And then what they do to occupy their time in the meantime. So the kids are very creative in the games, and that kind of life is what existed a long, long time ago in the United States. Yeah, so I love trying my best to raise my children amongst that as well, but, also getting sucked into the whole of, keeping up with the Joneses to a certain extent that and some I refuse. But yeah, and I get so defensive when people think that they're less, because if anything, they have so much more going on up here as far as creativity and the ability to figure it out when it needs to happen.
One thing I think that we will come to understand in America, and we did used to understand this, it's ironic too, in a city like this, that it was only 2-3 generations ago for most people in any town this size, that their ancestors came here from somewhere else. Unless you're a Native American, you probably weren't born here. You can go back, but you're only going back a couple hundred years at best, even if you've been here since like the Mayflower, right? So it's ironic that in that culture, we don't actually value the fact that there are people here who have risked their lives to be here, who have had great hardships to be here, and that they actually, because of who they are, have something to contribute that we can't get here, because we don't have the same mentality, we don't have the same background, we don't have the magic inside them looks very different from the magic inside of people who've born and raised here. And that's not to say that people who are born and raised here, it's not better or worse. It's a matter of there's so many things, and I think what we're going to see is there's a lack of trust right now within many populations in America who consider themselves underserved or minorities. And that lack of trust is, some of it's warranted and some of it's unwarranted, but regardless, it is, right? And so what we're going to see, though, is as communities start working together and people start coming together in these groups and they start companies together and they realize, hey, that person actually has the skill set that we need to create this thing over here, to create this company, and they start teaming up together, you're going to start seeing those walls start to break down and trust begin to be established again. Because first off, we see that as part of the role that we play, is to break down those walls and push people together and really be a leader in that area, because we get to straddle so many different worlds. But you're going to see, we have to start establishing trust again on everybody's parts, or else it's never going to work. And the only way you do that is to get to know who your real neighbors are and spend some time with them.
Yeah. For sure. And not be intimidated by it either. I think some people are afraid to cross the bridge because they're who we are, who they are. And it's tough this area suffers a lot with that, I feel like.
Right. Well, and the interesting part is that's not just this area. It's every town that we work in. It's very similar.
Yeah. Interesting. So I want to check the list here and see if there's any questions popping up. Is there anything coming up over there, Z? Nothing coming up. Okay. So awesome. And so Utica, because of Martin, really. I was like wondering how this company out of Idaho is now in Utica.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I think that's really common here is this mentality of like local, buy local, shop local. And like, how the hell did this company from Idaho get this job or get this partnership or even get the interest of people here? I think it's cool. I'm not knocking it at all. But have you been asked why the guy from Idaho?
Yeah. Yeah, mostly because they go, wait, Idaho, that's like the potato place, right? We're like, yeah. There's some potatoes there. Yeah, and it's actually been one of the things that we are very careful about is when we work with a new city, we never want to be looked at as the quote unquote missionaries who are coming in to espouse their faith on somebody else and force someone into doing something. And so we're super careful about there's a culture here. There's a bunch of people who were here long before we were here. They've been doing things in a certain way for a certain time, some of them for very good reasons. We don't ever want to come in and step on anyone's toes. But at the same time, if 5 years from now, people from Utica don't feel like they're getting theirs, then it's their own fault because we tried to lay that out right in front of them. But the interesting part is as we've come and talked to people, the overwhelming response was we're actually glad you're not from here because it gives you guys a different perspective.
Yeah. Coming in unbiased.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Good.
So it's been very positive. I haven't had one person who was like, from Idaho, huh? You should go back to Idaho. That's like, hasn't come up at all.
Yeah. Great. Oh, that's good. I would hope that our city receives this well. I think that there's potential
overwhelmingly I'm like, it's been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah. 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 And I think sometimes part of our, what has hurt us more than anything was this mentality of like local, which I am a big believer in local business. I don't like to support franchises. I hear that, but with other businesses coming in and taking an interest in promoting this type of activity, I think it's like really powerful. It's good.
Well, you hit on something a few minutes ago too, that I think that we're starting to see here. And that is for a long time, because of the history of not just Utica, but central New York and much of America, our cultures have been, I'm from the West, and in the West, you went out and you homesteaded and you just made shit happen because that's what you had to do to live, right? But here, things refined more slowly and grew, and we became more civilized over a longer period of time. And so this mentality developed that there is a big industry partner somewhere who's going to give me something, which is a job, and then they're going to tell me how to do that job. And if I play my cards right, then I'm going to get this thing out of it, whether it's a pension or retirement or whatever those things are. And so this psyche starts to develop within people where they go, we're always waiting for someone else to give us permission or lead us to do the next, whatever that next thing is. And you can see it in a lot of different, like small things I've noticed here. But that's starting to change. People are going, we don't need someone from the outside to come and tell us what to do. We can actually do something for ourselves. We can create these companies ourselves. And there's companies here that have done that, but their stories haven't gotten told. And so people aren't getting inspired because they don't realize one of the largest cell phone manufacturers in the entire world is right here in Utica, the cell phone case manufacturers. And most people don't know that. And so you're like, Chuck Green, who we're interviewing on Wednesday night, the guy literally was working for a company and decided he wanted to start his own company. So he flew a flagpole up the company, pirate flag up the company flagpole and going, this is what we're going to do. And then took that flagpole down and went and started his own company with that same mentality of we're going to be like pirates. That's badass. But the average person here's never heard that story. And they don't get to realize that there's a lot of people here who actually have done something themselves. They never get to hear those stories. And so that's part of what we do is tell those stories.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah. I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I think the most important piece for me that you share today here is that sharing the stories is what really highlights how people can make this happen for themselves, and every story that I've had here on my podcast is stories, not really always entrepreneurs, just things that are not easy.
Right.
Tasks that when they first come at you or when they're first on the table or the opportunity to come here and implement this and be like, well, these people I don't even know, I'm going to try to get them to believe in themselves. It's challenging. So
right.
I congratulate you on taking the risk and coming here and doing it because we could use it. And I know a lot of people will appreciate hearing the other stories that also shines light on the process not being so easy.
We appreciate it. One other thing that we are doing now, I want to make sure we touch on is we're going to be hiring a local community manager. So somebody here full time who will become the face and the eyes and ears of Innovation Collective here over the next 3 years to 5 years. So that's a hunt that we're currently on, and we're looking for that. It's a full time paid position. So if somebody wants information on that, you can go to innovationcollective.co/Utica, and there's a link there to that page.
Yeah, share all your social media right now if you'd like to, where they would find the most information. I know there's a group about Utica that shares valuable information.
Yeah, so there's a Facebook group, a private Facebook group called Innovation Collective Utica. That's where a lot of the stuff happens because that's one of those areas where we can online connect people back to each other and share resources and help each other out. Also, the innovationcollective.co is our website. And if they want to get on our mailing list, they can go to innovationcollective.co/Utica. And there's a place on there to get on our mailing list as well. Those are the best places to go right now.
Yeah, cool. One thing, if you want to share, there's two last things. Is there anyone that you want to get connected with that you haven't yet, that you can literally call out right now and be like, if somebody knows this person, I want to know them?
Yeah. The one area that I haven't gotten, and it's just because of time, I haven't connected with yet is anyone in local high schools. I would love to start helping high school students. All of our events that we have are family friendly. They're fun. Anybody of any age could come and enjoy them. In fact, we even do events once in a while. We get like just a ton of kids. We did one where the guy who, with the first ever Canadian team to try to summit Mount Everest, the guy happened to live in this town that we were working in, and this other guy made a documentary on him. So we had him come and talk about climbing Mount Everest. And we had like 100 kids show up because it was all about Everest, and they all thought that was fascinating. So anybody of any age can come. But what I really want right now is to get in touch with anybody in local high schools. It doesn't have to be STEM. It doesn't have to be entrepreneur, but just anybody in local high schools we can start encouraging kids to come to some of these events and to participate in what we're doing and really help high school students and even middle school students get involved and start being inspired at an even younger age.
Yeah. So if you know someone who works in the school system, feel free to tag them in the bottom of this video or put them in touch directly with Chris or even me if you want them to reach out to me and I can connect you guys. But feel free to share it with them or message them to tune into this episode so they can hear what he's doing and see if it's something of interest to them to get the kids involved or at least to get them interested in this opportunity to make connections and be creative. So, yeah. All right. So one of the things I also like to do with my guests is if you can sum up, just one thing that you would advise in general in life, like what would it be?
One thing that I would advise in general in life.
And really, this is nothing even to do with what you're doing here. I would say, like, from all the experience you bring to the table.
Well, that's a tough one. I would say it's a two-parter. It's believe in yourself, which sounds like funny because that's the name of this podcast, but believe in yourself. And then number two, put a plan in place so that you can actually on a regular basis shore up that belief in yourself. I always say that if your personal development plan, it's not a plan unless you can write it down. So otherwise it's just an idea. So if you have a personal development plan, you should be able to document that and say, here's what I do and here's how I do it. And so if personal development and believe in yourself, those are the two big things I think I've learned in life. Discipline just is people doing what they know needs to be done, whether they want to or not. Yeah. It's nothing magical. Yeah. And so believing in yourself and personal development are the quickest ways to get there.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I like it. Personal development's my thing.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So thank you so much for doing this. Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So up next, my next episode will be November 4th, and it's actually going to be live from Puerto Rico. We're going to keep this to be announced who's going to be on the set with me. It's going to be live. It's going to be on, we're going to be down there. So it's going to be from down there. We will not be here. I think the last time I traveled, I had my friends hijack this set, and that was fun. But this time I'm going to keep the cameras with me. So I will see you November 4th. And for the next episode of Unstoppable You, the podcast with me, Heather Beebe, where we have unstoppable stories, unstoppable people, unstoppable you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
So you just bought your dream home, and now it's time to move. Let's face it, nobody likes to move. All the packing, unpacking, lifting, upstairs, downstairs, and broking everything, including your back. Let the professionals at EJA Moving Company take all the stress and pain out of your move. Competitively priced moving, relocation services, office moves, and complete packing and unpacking services. They work with everybody to make it simple and easy for you to move and relocate. Call EJA Moving Company at 315-335-0516. When it's time to relocate, have EJA Moving do all the work for you. Hit them up online, ejamoving.com.
Hey, Disruption Network. This is Mike Sacco, the general manager at Nye Volkswagen of Rome. If you don't know me by name, it's only because you have not received the best deal. There's only one reason to leave Utica, and that's to come see me in Rome and get the best deal on your next new, pre-owned, or certified VW. Mention that you heard this ad from Disruption Network and receive $250 off your next vehicle purchase. You'll know why our customers say, I love my Nye VW. Come see us at 5865 Rome Taberg Road in Rome, or visit us online at nyvwofrome.com.
Want to know what's going on at the D? Hit up DisruptionNetwork.net and check out our events calendar, brought to you by the Events Co. Find out about upcoming guests, special events, concerts, show schedules, community activities, and more. Get connected at DisruptionNetwork.net.